Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Welcome to the Happiness Show. This is George Ortega. I'm here with Dr. Douglas Ram, and we're here to talk about happiness because happiness is, always has been, and always will be the point of it all. The topic for today's show is the Formula for Happiness, Part 3, Core Principles. In the first episode of this series, we went through an overview of Dr. Ram's happiness and character enhancement program called the Formula for Happiness and talked about his matrix of core values. Last episode, we explored the general inventory of life satisfaction measurement and assessment instrument that Dr. Ram developed to validate and to optimize this formula. Today, we'll be talking about the core principles Dr. Ram developed for character and happiness enhancement. For those of you who missed our last episodes, Dr. Ram is a board-certified clinical psychologist with a practice in suburban Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. His pioneering research on the relationship between happiness and human behavior has attracted worldwide interest since it was introduced to the scientific community in New Ideas in Psychology, an international journal of innovative theory in psychology, in 1996. His book, The Formula for Happiness, was published in 2004. He has also been published in The American Psychologist, the journal of record for the American Psychological Association. Dr. Ram is a member of both the American Psychological Association and the American Philosophical Association. Welcome back, Dr. Ram.
Thanks for having me.
I'm wondering if you could begin by explaining why you developed these core principles, how you developed them, and how they're used.
Sure. Well, as I said in our previous episodes, I guess the first one, my goal in coming up with the Formula for Happiness was to try and help people understand A, what they need to become and remain happy, and then B, how to go about getting it. The matrix of core values contains the 10 core values, which my research has demonstrated are what we need in order to become and remain happy. And so that's the first part of the formula. The second part has to do with how do you go about the process of getting them. One thing I discovered as a clinical psychologist is that many people who thought they were going to be happier as a result of doing something they did ended up becoming much less happier than they were before they pursued that course of action. And so it was clear to me that we really needed to have some understanding of what these self-defeating behaviors really are. And by self-defeating behavior, I mean a course of action which appears to enhance our happiness, but in the end actually undermines it in some way. So to figure out what these were or are, I used 100 clients that I had in psychotherapy and got permission from them to allow me to do a systematic case study looking at two variables. One, whether and to what degree they were happy on the one hand, and the other was what, if anything, they did which resulted in the loss of happiness which brought them to the attention of a mental health professional in the first place. And so the basic methodology was to take a case history and then analyze it with respect to what, if any, volitional behavior on their part contributed to a threat to or loss of any of these core values. And then I went back to the Natural Science 101, basic scientific method, which is observation, generalization, and verification. In other words, you take two incidents and you see what they have in common, and then you begin to develop a generalization. Once you've got that generalization formulated, then you see if the next case fits it in some sense, and that then verifies your generalization. So I took these 100 cases, culled out what, if anything, they did to bring on their own unhappiness, and then just went case to case to case to see whether there was anything in common from one case to the next. Now, out of the 100 cases, I was able to identify something that the person had done in 94 of them, which doesn't mean the other 6 didn't have it. I just couldn't find it. Okay, so that's a pretty high number. And then, as I began to look at what they actually did, these patterns began to emerge quite early on, and by the time I got to the 37th case, every subsequent case could be categorized in terms of what I had discovered in the first 37, okay, which gave me confidence that the patterns of behavior which I had identified by the 37th case were, in fact, the patterns of behavior that tend to result in a threat to or loss of our happiness. And there was actually 7 patterns of behavior which I've then come to call the 7 patterns of self-defeating behavior, which I'll run through. The first is what we call heedless behavior. And this is pursuing a course of action despite knowing that it constitutes a threat to one or more of your core values. Most obvious example would be cigarette smoking. I mean, every pack of cigarettes comes with a warning on it. The smoker reads it. You know, cigarette smoking can cause emphysema, cancer, or heart disease. If you continue to do that, then that undermines your health, which, as we've talked before, lowers your overall quality of life and your general sense of happiness, contentment, and satisfaction in living. But it also can have an impact on other core values. Obviously, the amount of money you spend on cigarettes interferes with your ability to obtain and maintain certain significant material objects. It may have a negative effect on affirmation in that you become a pariah in some parts of the country. You're not welcome. Okay, may have a significant impact on your abilities to find companionship with people, and certainly it's pretty difficult for a person who smokes cigarettes to have an intimate relationship with somebody who finds that to be a rather disgusting habit. Okay. Again, if you have certain health consequences, it may have a negative effect on your ability to keep a job or to engage in certain recreational activities. And the whole time you're smoking, there's some sense of anxiety over what am I doing to myself. So it actually interferes with your security in some way. So that would be an example of a heedless behavior which people engage in, and nonetheless, or as a result, they think smoking is going to make them feel better, but in the end, it has a negative effect on their emotional well-being. And other examples would obviously be the abuse of alcohol, the use of street drugs, driving a car without wearing a seatbelt, speeding, on and on and on. And the book contains numerous examples of heedless behavior. What was fascinating about the research was that we controlled 3 variables. One was intelligence, another was education, and a third was socioeconomic status. Because typically when people get in trouble as a result of heedless behavior, they refer to themselves as stupid. Okay, it was a stupid thing to do. But there's absolutely no correlation with intelligence. Okay, meaning that it doesn't matter how smart you are, you may engage in some kind of heedless behavior. No correlation with education either. Okay, so it's not a matter of whether you're intelligent or whether you're educated. It's a matter of whether you're using your brains and using what you know. And there was also no correlation with socioeconomic status. I mean, some of these people who got themselves into a jam this way were making well over $100,000 a year. So anyway, that's the first self-defeating pattern of behavior. The second is what we call non-productive behavior, and this is failing to invest the amount of time and energy one needs to invest in order to obtain and maintain our core values. Example of this would be a fellow who lost his job. He was working for a major corporation outside of Pittsburgh, and this was back about 10 years ago or so. He had discovered the internet and was spending a tremendous amount of time on the clock on the internet. Well, he didn't realize that the employer could observe this, and one day His supervisor arrives at his office and says, "You're done. So you haven't been doing your job." And that was the end of his job, and he really suffered pretty badly. Many losses in terms of his core values. The third is what we call self-effacing behavior, and this is where people pursue courses of action intended to make other people happy while neglecting what they really need to do to maintain their own set of core values. And this was often observable in adolescence and early adult life, but usually catches up with people somewhere in the middle years, typically in marriage, where one spouse has, more or less lived their life for the sake of the other and ends up really very unhappy and depressed because the things that were important to them have never really played any role in the decision-making process that the couple has gone through. The fourth type of self-defeating behavior is what we call disrespectful behavior. This is failing to respect the basic rights of other people. And for purposes of this model, we have 4 basic rights. You can remember them from the Declaration of Independence when Jefferson says that we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Pretty much what he meant, if you read the rest of the document, by happiness was property and privacy. Okay, so in this model, we see the self-defeating behavior of disrespect as failing to respect another person's physical well-being, health and safety, failing to respect their property, their meaningful material objects, failing to respect their freedom, the ability to do what they want to do when they want to do it, and the ability the failure to respect their privacy, which has an impact on their intimacy. So we don't have time to go into examples, but again, if someone's interested, the book is chock full of them. The next type of self-defeating behavior is what we call unfaithful behavior, and this is failing to fulfill obligations that one has freely entered into at an earlier point in time. One simple, obvious example would be marital infidelity. I mean, you promise on one date that you're going to forsake all others, and then a few years or a few months, in some cases later, you don't. And then again, that can have a tremendous negative impact on one's matrix of core values. But we see this in business settings where people fail to fulfill warranties, in friendships where people fail to fulfill promises they've made to one another, in parent-child relationships where parents and or children fail to follow through with things they say they're going to do. And that creates just a tremendous amount of interpersonal conflict and has a pretty negative effect on one's overall matrix of core values. The next self-defeating behavior pattern is what we call deceptive behavior. And this is any activity that is intended to create in another person's mind some sort of image of reality that doesn't correspond with the way things actually are. Today, this is certainly possible with video technology, recording, computer tampering with images and things like this, falsifying documents, etc. But probably the most common form of deceptive behavior is your garden variety lie. And so any time people are engaging in deception, they are jeopardizing one or more of their core values. In fact, this morning's USA Today that I was reading in the motel had a front page story about some attorney who got himself into a jam through some sort of deceptive behavior and lost his license, spent 6 years in jail, and so on and so forth. And again, we could go through how that had a negative effect on his matrix of core values. One thing we discovered in that was, of course, that when people are deceptive about themselves anyway, it's usually because they are already or they intend to engage in some kind of heedless, non-productive, disrespectful, or unfaithful pattern of behavior. Okay, so when people are being dishonest, it usually is a way of kind of telling ourselves, you see, that if we're being deceptive, we've already done something that's self-defeating, or we intend to do it, and that's very important insight to have, particularly if we're talking about the future. The seventh form of self-defeating behavior is what we call ill-considered interpersonal interaction. this is engaging in courses of action with people who habitually engage in one or more of the self-defeating patterns of behavior. Okay? So, for example, a situation in which two men are working in a refinery where they're surrounded by flammable gases, and one fellow smokes and the other doesn't. And the smoker ignores the no smoking signs, which would be heedless behavior, and kaboom, the other guy's dead too, even though he wasn't doing anything that was heedless himself. He was destroyed by being associated with this man. And so anytime we pursue courses of action with people who we know have a tendency to engage in one or more of these self-defeating patterns of behavior, then we're risking our own happiness, because they can take us down with them in one way or another. And so we use these 7 self-defeating behavior patterns, see now, as the basis for formulating our core principles for making choices in daily living. Again, going back to what I think we spoke about in our first episode, which is the analogy here between the principles of health and the principles of happiness. In other words, we know from observations made by physicians and physiologists that when people smoke cigarettes, they often tend to end up with some kind of health problem. So if we know that that's the connection between smoking cigarettes and various kinds of life-threatening diseases, then the alternative is to not smoke. And so we can recommend that people avoid the use of tobacco, and that's a principle of health. Similarly, if the goal here is to enhance people's happiness, then if we can formulate alternatives to these self-defeating behavior patterns, which people can apply on a daily basis, people will be doing what they can to obtain and maintain the highest level of quality of life that's available to them. Okay? And so we call these core principles the principles for the pursuit of happiness. And there are 4 of them. Again, based on alternatives to the self-defeating patterns of behavior. The first is what we call self-respect. This is the alternative to heedless behavior, the alternative to self-effacing behavior, and the alternative to ill-considered interpersonal interaction. Okay? It's based on the idea that you have to continuously be looking out for your own quality of life, vigilant with respect to threats that are out there to it, and taking appropriate action to ensure that you're going to be able to maintain the matrix of core values that you already have. Okay? And that obviously is the foundation for the pyramid. Second is industry. This is the alternative to non-productive behavior. In the old days, you'd call this the work ethic, but we didn't want to use that term, so we used industry. Okay? In other words, you need to put in the time and effort required to get and keep your core values, as opposed to trying to get them by thievery, begging them off of other people, or trusting to luck in some way. You know, in Pennsylvania, they did a survey where 1 in 10 Pennsylvanians thinks the only way they're going to get ahead in life is to win the lottery. That's a staggering figure if you think about it. So they're not taking any extra money they have and going out and trying to figure out how to maybe apply themselves industriously to make some extra cash or improve their quality of life. They're taking it down to the convenience store and buying lottery tickets. So we know, again, that if you actually do something productive, then you have a much better chance of obtaining and maintaining happiness than you do if you use some other means of trying to get there. The third principle is equity, and this is the alternative to disrespectful and unfaithful behavior. It consists of keeping your promises and respecting other people's basic rights. Again, you can be self-respecting, you can be hard-working, but if you don't treat other people fairly, as this attorney that I was referring to earlier, you're not going to be able to maintain and retain happiness. The pinnacle of the pyramid is honesty, which is rendering an accurate description of reality. It's the alternative to deceptive behavior. We put that at the top because that's what really keeps us straight with ourselves, okay? And it clearly has positive effects for other people. Now, we refer to this as the pyramid of principles, or I do anyway, because I want to use the analogy of the food pyramid. In other words, if you want to become and remain happy, you have to apply these 4 principles every day and in combination, okay? You can't just be industrious and not be equitable. You can't be self-respecting and not be honest, or you're going to undermine your happiness. So the whole thing fits together as the 4 basic principles to apply in day-to-day living as we confront alternatives, as we go through that day. Okay. The other way to refer to this is as the formula for happiness, in the sense that these are the 4 guidelines that are likely to enhance and enrich your quality of life. Now, there's no guarantee. Just like if you follow the principles of health, there's no guarantee you're not going to get hit by a bus and be killed or maimed. But if you follow these principles, you're doing the best you can to maximize your potential for becoming and remaining happy, at least what's within your own control.
Great. Okay, so now we have a pretty comprehensive understanding of the major components of your formula for happiness. Now, can you describe how you're disseminating this formula through various sectors of society?
Well, I think I mentioned last time that we're using it in the mental health field as a foundation for clinical intervention with a number of people who are suffering from depression. It can also be used in counseling settings for people who are looking for answers to certain questions in living and trying to make decisions in terms of which courses of action to pursue. It can be used in coaching settings, again, where people are looking at trying to enhance not only their quality of life, but their skill sets and those kinds of things. So all of those are really with adults. Obviously, the self-help book, The Formula for Happiness, is intended to communicate this way of thinking and this way of understanding life to purchasers of that kind of literature. And then we have a few other things that are pretty promising now too. I have developed a variation of this for adolescents, which we are using with juvenile offenders in western Pennsylvania. The county where I reside, which is Westmoreland County, which is the first county east of Pittsburgh, we have about 400,000, population about 400,000, and our juvenile court has enabled me to develop a pilot program for juvenile offenders, and it went so well that I've trained other people, and now all of the teens that are going through the system have to take this program, which is an 8-week course where they learn about these principles, they learn about the matrix of core values, and we call it the Facts of Life seminar. And it's been very rewarding because the kids, I think, for the first time see why acting on principle, why thinking about acting on principle is important to them, and how it can enrich and enhance the quality of their lives. That's been so successful that I've actually presented it to the state, Pennsylvania State Juvenile Judges Conference back in November, and there's some discussion now about instituting it in some other counties and maybe even at the state level. So that's been very rewarding, and we've got statistics indicating that it really does have an impact on the kids. I've always thought that this really belongs in the schools, and if we could train kids to think in terms of this before they get into trouble with the law, that's even better. In fact, in 2 of the Facts of Life seminars that I did with adolescents, one kid in each of the programs came up to me after classes, "Why didn't I learn this in school? If I learned this in school, I wouldn't be here right now." And I said, "Well, precisely, that's probably where it belongs." So I have been presenting it to some school districts, and right now plans are in the works for Hempfield Area School District, which is the 7th largest school district in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, to institute this in their middle school in this coming fall. And hopefully we'll be able to get some statistics out of that, which will then enable us to to replicate this in some other venues.
That's wonderful. We have about 2.5 minutes left. Would you like to go over some of the actual results you've gotten from the juvenile offender? Because I'm aware of them. They're extremely impressive.
Yes, what we were looking at, what we were trying to do is obviously motivate these kids to think and act on principle. And the goal, for the court anyway, is to reduce certain types of antisocial behavior. So we looked at 4 types of behavior that the court was interested in reducing, and then using pre and post tests we're able to assess the likelihood that the kids are going to actually behave the way we want them to, and the statistics are as follows. Based on the pre-test for the likelihood that they're going to refrain from violence, 41% of them indicated that that was probably true. And at the end of the course, 78% of them indicated that they saw some reason to refrain from violence, which was a 90% increase. And again, with this population, anything over 20% is considered significant. With respect to refraining from theft, it went from 26% to 50%, a 92% increase. The likelihood that they're going to keep their promises went from 22% to 62%, which is a 182% increase. And the likelihood that they are going to tell the truth went from 24% to 68%, which is a 183% increase. And we were very, very happy with those findings.
That's wonderful. Dr. Ram, thank you for this very comprehensive, interesting, and very important presentation. I really look forward to seeing your applications of the formula for happiness being disseminated through all the sectors of society, schools, juvenile offenders, throughout, because it really can apply to everyone at whatever age we are. Okay, before we close, I'd like to mention that Dr. Ram's book, The Formula for Happiness, is available through major bookstores or through Dr. Ram's website, theformulaforhappiness.com. Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you for watching. In the future, we'll explore other topics designed to help us better enjoy life. Be good, think well, feel very happy, and I hope you join us again next week here on The Happiness Show.
Thank you, George.
Happiness is powerful. It's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.